It's a familiar debate: does the Bible condemn homosexuality, or not? Those who view the Bible as a literal text often point to stories like Sodom and Gomorrah, as well as the writings of the Apostle Paul and the book of Leviticus, to claim that the Bible is anti-gay. However, those in the LGBTQ+ community argue that these interpretations are flawed, and that the Bible is not as clear-cut as some would believe. For example, the infamous passages in Leviticus are believed by some to only be condemning certain Canaanite practices. Some theologians argue that Leviticus isn't talking about loving, consensual relationships, but rather extreme orgiastic behavior practiced by a specific group of people, rather than homosexuality as a whole. So, what's the answer? Does the Bible condemn homosexuality, or not? It's a topic that continues to be debated to this day. The debate surrounding homosexuality in biblical texts is a relevant topic in today's society. Rather than taking sides and presenting arguments from the Bible, the goal is to provide a historical and contextual interpretation of the texts. To achieve this, it's crucial to examine the influence of Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations on the Israelite civilization and the authors of the Hebrew Bible, which we will delve into thoroughly. Additionally, we won't overlook the few New Testament texts that address the topic. As Israel stepped into history, they found themselves amidst the grandeur of two ancient empires already well established for over 2 millennia. The Mediterranean and Tigris-Euphrates regions, pivotal lands that served as connecting points for the two empires, had already seen its fair share of ideas, traders, and armies, moving back and forth, shaping the ever-changing relationships between Mesopotamia and Egypt. In ancient times, long before the 8th century BC, when the biblical text began to be written, Mesopotamia and Egypt had already begun the practice of documenting their way of life, beliefs, and knowledge. As a result, they amassed vast libraries that contained everything from historical records to fantastical legends, advanced sciences to profound spiritual teachings. These were not just scribbles on parchment or papyrus, but rather meticulously crafted works that reflected the sophistication and depth of these ancient civilizations. It's hard to imagine that an ethnic group sandwiched between two powerful empires could have developed without being influenced by them. The tribes of the Palestinian highlands couldn't have possibly ignored the likes of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Even the Bible doesn't deny their impact. So, to begin our enlightening historical journey on the topic, we must first turn to the art and literature of those neighboring giants, Mesopotamia and Egypt. Before delving into the complex history of Mesopotamia, it's worth examining a famous narrative from the Hebrew Bible that was influenced by Mesopotamian epics, the tale of David and Jonathan. This story is known for its portrayal of a deep and loyal friendship between the two men, but it also draws heavily on themes and motifs found in Mesopotamian literature. David and Jonathan meet after a battle. From the very start, they share a close and deep relationship despite being skilled fighters and one being a king's son. They commit to each other with strong intimate words and remain loyal for life. Describing the relationship between David and Jonathan is a sensitive topic that has led to differing interpretations. Some scholars believe that there could not have been a homosexual relationship between them and reject any interpretation that suggests otherwise. They prioritize other aspects of David's story. Other commentators focus on the topic of homosexuality and selectively quote passages from David's story to support their view. However, they often remove these passages from their context, which is crucial for understanding. It's essential to accurately analyze the biblical narrative to understand the relationship between David and Jonathan. Examining the language used, recurring themes, and other elements of their story can help make sense of what actually happened between them. The story of David and Jonathan is primarily found in the first book of Samuel, specifically in chapters 18 to 20. In addition to those chapters, there are other references to their relationship in 2 Samuel 1 and scattered verses through 2 Samuel 9. The description of the first encounter in 1 Samuel 18 is a bit surprising. Let's read from chapter 17 to get some context. 1 Samuel 17 verses 57 and 58. And as David returned from slaying the Philistine, Abner called him, and brought him before Saul, and the Philistine's head was in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son are you, young man? And David said, "The son of your bondsman, Jesse the Bethlehemite." 1 Samuel 18. And it was, as he finished speaking to Saul, that Jonathan's soul had become attached to David's soul, and Jonathan loved him as himself. And Saul took him on that day, and did not allow him to return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. And Jonathan stripped himself of the cloak which was on him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and even to his bow, and even to his girdle. The initial meeting outlined in 1 Samuel 18 paints a vivid and unexpected picture. Picture this. A crown prince, Jonathan, in a spontaneous act, strips himself of his royal regalia and offers them to a young beautiful stranger named David. The symbolic and political significance of this gesture is strikingly powerful. By offering up his clothes and weapons, Jonathan seems to be relinquishing his claim to the throne in favor of David. He places the trappings of his power in David's hands, choosing to devote himself entirely to David's cause. As impressive as the symbolic and political dimensions of Jonathan's gestures are, the psychological implications of his action are equally compelling. What could possibly motivate a man to strip himself entirely before a stranger? In the ancient Near East, a man of high rank would never consider undressing, as clothing played a significant role in defining social status. Jonathan's act of disrobing reveals something much more personal and intimate, an unquestionably erotic feeling towards David. This not only defies the societal norms of the time but also suggests a deep emotional connection between the two men. The account of the initial encounter between Jonathan and David in 1 Samuel 18 illuminates several elements that underpin their relationship. It introduces themes and vocabulary that will recur throughout their story, such as the use of the verb to love, the establishment of an alliance, and the complementary nature of their personalities. These factors distinguish their connection as something exceptional and noteworthy. Moreover, these beginning verses reveal another significant point. The primary terms that characterize the bond between David and Jonathan can be understood in multiple ways that are not mutually exclusive. The author employs various registers of language to playfully explore these different interpretations throughout the course of their story. The use of the verb, to love, in these 4 verses is particularly notable, as it recurs throughout Jonathan's history with David, appearing a total of 3 times in 1 Samuel 20 verse 17. And Jonathan continued to make David swear, in his love for him, for he loved him the love of his soul. This Hebrew root for love encompasses a broad range of meanings, including romantic love, familial attachment, divine favor, and political loyalty. This final meaning is particularly significant in the context of the ancient Near East's vassalage treaties. In fact, Deuteronomy 6 verse 5 emphasizes this type of love, as it states, "You shall love Yahweh your God, with all your heart, with all your life, and with all your strength." This love is in the context of an ancient Near East vassalage treaty. Yahweh is the overlord, and Israel is the vassal. As the story of Jonathan and David unfolds, the narrator masterfully employs the various shades of meaning that the term love can convey, to develop and convey the complexity of their relationship. The diverse meanings of the verb, to love, are exemplified in 1 Samuel 18. In this chapter, the term is used to denote Jonathan's affection for David, verses 1 and 3, the love the people of Israel have for David after he leads them to victory, verse 16, and the love that Michal, Saul's daughter, develops for David when she becomes his wife, verses 20 and 28. These various uses illustrate both intimate relationships between individuals, first between 2 men, then between a man and a woman, as well as relationships with social and political undertones, such as the love the people of Israel have for the hero who protects and leads them. One cannot overstate the political significance of the verb, to love, in the relationship between Jonathan and David. However, it is worth emphasizing a crucial difference between their relationship and the one found in the abundance of the Assyrian vassalage treatises, where the term, to love, is prevalent. The roles in David and Jonathan's friendship are reversed. Unlike the vassal who owes his love to the victorious king, their relationship is not between equal kings, but rather between a prince who voluntarily lowers himself to love a stranger. This context underscores the unique and exceptional nature of their covenant, and Jonathan's profound attachment to David. It is worth noting that Jonathan, the king's son and superior to any other man, besides his father, voluntarily undresses and offers the attributes of his power to a relative stranger, revealing the extraordinary depth of his affection and loyalty to David. When Jonathan is described as loving David as himself, a profound identification between the two men is established. To Jonathan, David is literally another self, someone who fully takes his place that he almost becomes indistinguishable from him. Throughout the rest of the story, this identification is fleshed out in a variety of situations, which is key to understanding the depth of their relationship. In chapter 19, for example, Jonathan takes David's place to defend him against Saul, while in chapter 20, he even impersonates David in the face of Saul's anger, who tries equally to kill him as he wanted to kill David. He impersonates David to protect him from Saul's deadly wrath. As the plot thickens, Jonathan finds himself in an increasingly difficult and dramatic situation, torn between his two allegiances. On one hand, his duty to obey his father, the king, and on the other hand, his deep, spontaneous attachment to David, whom he has virtually installed as his equal, a second self. There is a significant passage in the narrative where the reader encounters a word other than love, to describe Jonathan's love for David. It appears in 1 Samuel 19 verse 1. After Saul informs Jonathan and his servants of his intention to kill David, we are informed. But Jonathan, Saul's son, desired David very much. The Hebrew root kafetz primarily means to be pleased, or to desire. This verb carries a strong connotation of will and ownership, and is more frequently used to describe an attraction to an object rather than a person. When this term does describe an attraction between two individuals in the Hebrew Bible, it often implies a sexual connotation. Like Shechem's desire for Dinah in Genesis 34. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he desired Jacob's daughter, and he was the most honored in all his father's household. And the sexual relationship evoked between a man and a prisoner in Deuteronomy 21. And it will be, if you do not desire her, then you shall send her away wherever she wishes, but you shall not sell her for money. You shall not keep her as a servant, because you have afflicted her. In the Greek translation of 1 Samuel 19 verse 1, this word is translated as eros, which further emphasizes Jonathan's powerful desire for David. A physical and unconscious force pushes Jonathan toward David, something far more profound than what is conveyed by the term to love. The term kafetz, to desire, implies an inner attraction that goes far beyond the boundaries of conscious thought and willpower, highlighting the unique nature of their bond.